Coming up on today's show, we break down the final installment in Ty West's infamous X franchise, Maxxxine.
If you need to read off the sides we gave you, just go ahead, all right?
I know the lines.
She turns to the camera and, through her trauma, addresses the lens directly.
Stay tuned. Welcome to Scary World, where we walk you through the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I am your host, Arturo Padilla.
Hi.
For those of you just joining us, don't forget to subscribe up above and say what's up down below. We have one major rule around here, folks. No spoilers. Now that we got that out of the way, there are 5 categories: production, story, ensemble, horror, and legacy. Each category can earn the maximum of 2 points.
Showtime.
Per IMDb, the synopsis goes: in 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress Maxxxine Minx finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the streets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. Director Ty West is back to direct the 3rd installment of the X franchise, Maxxxine. West successfully manages to recreate the vibe and the look of an 80s thriller. The film has a slight grain to it that helps accentuate the zeitgeist, and it looks great. The movie is shot well with all the shots composed for peak effectiveness. Maxxxine is also full of great needle drops that hit their marks every time. All the levels of production were well executed. This movie looked and sounded great. I really enjoyed the way Ty West directed this 3rd film of his. I wasn't a big fan of X. As I mentioned before, I think X was shot a little bit too dark for my taste, and I think in comparison, Maxxxine is shot absolutely perfectly.
I don't like walking out here with that freaking Night Stalker guy on the loose.
The Night Stalker.
Night Stalker?
Night Stalker.
He's terrorizing Los Angeles.
I can handle myself.
Everything is nice and lit, everything is well shot, everything is in your face, everything is right where it needs to be. With X, we had a little bit more to decipher because of the poor lighting and all the exterior night shots that could have used a little bit more help with light. With Maxxxine, we get scenes and scenes of just beautifully shot daytime exterior and beautifully shot nighttime exterior, and Ty West manages to perfect the look of his franchise with this 3rd installment. And for all the hard work put into this entire franchise, specifically with Maxxxine, which I think it's his pinnacle in the franchise of filmmaking, this movie gets a 2 for production. I really enjoyed the way the production came out, the needle drops were on point, everything just worked very well visually. And it's just a shame that we have to talk about the 3rd act later on in this segment, because everything in the 1st and 2nd act were executed very well up to Ty West's level, and he showcases why exactly he is a top horror director. The story and script were also written by Ty West. The story is paced well and it flows very nicely. The first 2 acts were very gripping and very compelling.
If I tell you something, we've got confidentiality.
What'd you do?
They hit all the proper beats along the way. My main issue with this story is with the 3rd act, folks. The story takes a polarizing turn that completely changes the tone of the entire narrative. It is unfortunate because Maxxxine was able to successfully build great tension and suspense throughout the course of the movie, but it was let down by the laughable and very awful reveal and payoff we get in Act 3. I just do not understand what happened with the script. We were doing very well for 2/3 of the movie, then all of a sudden, I don't know. It turns into a very different movie. It gets very campy, it gets very B-like, it gets very away from its identity. And it's a darn shame because we had a gripping, thrilling giallo type of horror film here, and it gets wasted because of the 3rd act. And for the very good 1st and 2nd act, this movie gets a 1 for story. I did not like that last act. In fact, I kind of hated it. And I am very surprised by what this turned out to be at the end of the day. I don't know what Ty West was thinking when he was writing this. He thinks he hit the landing. I completely disagree. And it sucks because this is the third and final movie of the franchise, and for it to end the way it did, very disappointing. The cast does a great job with their respective roles. Mia Goth once again steals the show and puts on another clinic in acting.
What's going on in your life that's interfering with this picture? Squash it. I intend to.
This time around, Maxxxine is oozing with confidence and determination, and it shows in every scene. Kevin Bacon does a solid job as a private detective, playing a perfect foil for Maxxine's character.
Ain't finished with you, Maxxxine. Ain't nowhere to hide. There's show business. You never work in this town again.
Bacon again plays the greatest dastardly villains ever on the screen, and with this role it is no different. He does a great job making sure Maxxine's life is turned upside down, and it is an absolute nightmare because of what he's doing. And for the incredible work of Mia Goth throughout this entire trilogy, and Kevin Bacon's awesome performance as the dastardly private detective, Maxxxine gets a 2 for ensemble. Not only were Kevin Bacon and Mia Goth great, but the rest of the cast was also on point and played an important part in the success of the first 2 acts of this movie. There is some good-looking practical gore sprinkled throughout this movie. The kills are gnarly, they're effective, and they look really good on the screen. This is one aspect that has never been an issue with the X franchise. It knows how to deliver excellent horror elements, and Maxxxine is no different.
Tragically, another victim of the Night Stalker.
I knew 3 people who were murdered in 3 days.
As I mentioned before, there is a giallo aspect to this movie. I love the way that everything is framed in terms of the kills. It reminds me of Deep Red, a very awesome Dario Argento movie. If you haven't seen that one, go check out Deep Red. I love the framing of all of the kills. It reminded me so much of a solid Italian horror flick. The close-ups of the hands, the close-ups of the actual weapon, the close-ups of the kills in terms of the incisions or the stab wounds or how the execution is done. There isn't crazy amounts of gore as we've seen in Pearl and in X, but this one just has enough to make it very effective when it comes to the kills and the horror elements. There is one scene in particular at the beginning of the movie where Maxxxine is getting followed by some creepo, and she takes the exact revenge she needed to for that, and it looks really good. The kills also look really good. We don't get a lot of the on-screen kills, but we do get some post-mortem bodies. There was one kill that I really enjoyed that looked really nicely and really exemplified the giallo style of horror filmmaking. And for all the awesome horror elements and the great practical effects and the great makeup and prosthetics, Maxxxine gets a 2 for horror. I really enjoyed the kills in this movie. I liked the way they were framed and shot. It really did take me back to those Argento movies, and I think Ty West did a phenomenal job showcasing his true horror self in all these 3 movies. This movie was good. The first 2/3 was really good, but it was also very disappointing. There were elements in the story that should have been developed or expanded on further, and that 3rd act is just very, very polarizing and conflicting. The biggest takeaway from this whole franchise and this movie is the unbelievably talented Mia Goth and her performances. They will live on forever. But let's get back to this X franchise, folks. This being the 3rd movie in the franchise and the last one in the franchise really buried this whole entire thing, man. I was not a big fan of X, as I mentioned before. I rewatched it and I felt the same exact way I watched it the first time. I gave it a 5 out of 10. And watching Maxxxine, it is a superior movie, but the ending absolutely destroys any positive that Ty West was working up to. And it is a darn shame because 2/3 of this movie, as I keep saying, was absolutely very, very good. But that ending completely buries the entire movie and buries the entire legacy of this franchise. Because if this is the way we're gonna go out, folks, I'm good. This is why I enjoyed Pearl. I think the Pearl character was more successful, and I think that story was just a heck of a lot more interesting, and it just proves that the wheels on this Maxxxine train were bound to fall off. And for the extremely and very disappointing ending to this trilogy, This movie gets a 0 for legacy. I hate to give this a 0 because of Mia Goth and her excellence, but I definitely gave her points elsewhere. But this movie deserves a 0 somewhere because what happened, Ty West? What happened? It looks like a whole different director took over the end of this movie and destroyed it and completely ruined all the awesome work that was done before it. And this is why it leaves a terrible taste in my mouth. And I will give it a 0 for legacy all day long. So to tally it up, Maxxxine received a 2 for production, a 1 for story, a 2 for ensemble, a 2 for horror, and a 0 for legacy, bringing the total score up to a 7. As I mentioned before, folks, I did enjoy 2/3 of this movie. Unfortunately, the last act of this movie definitely was not my cup of tea and kind of ruins the rest of the franchise. Because if the main story we're following is the story of Maxxxine, and this is how it ends, I am very disappointed. I kind of wish maybe he should have fleshed it out to a third Maxxxine movie. Maybe it would have given it some more life and some more development behind her character and her story. But what we got here was absolute trash at the end. And I hate to say that because there was a lot of good work done throughout the course of this movie and the course of this franchise. But the ending was absolute trash.
Can you tell me what time it is?
And that's a wrap, folks. Thank you for watching Scary World. Don't forget to drop a comment down below, hit the thumbs up on the video, and most importantly, do not forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have spoiler-free horror movie reviews for you dropping all throughout the week. Plus, we have the official CorpseFeed podcast, The Morgue, dropping every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast streams, as well as on YouTube, on Twitch Live, on Facebook Live, and on X Live. You get all of us there on Tuesdays, and you can watch the podcast and leave some comments and reviews. We would highly appreciate it. We are also on all the socials. Go like, subscribe, and share over there because we are everywhere, folks. We will see you next time for another episode. And remember, it's a scary world out there, but we are here to walk you through it.